Welcome to Reading the Bible with Pastor. Today we're on Exodus chapter 40. It's the last chapter here, and the people of Israel have put all of their resources and done the command of the Lord to make the tabernacle. Now they're going to erect it according to the command of the Lord. And all this begins on the very first month of the year, Nisan, which is the same month by which the Israelites exited out of Egypt, and also the Passover happens on the 14th day of the month. So let's begin. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, On the first day of the first month you shall erect the tabernacle of the tent of meeting, and you shall put in it the ark of the testimony, and you shall screen the ark with the veil. And you shall bring in the table and arrange it, and you shall bring in the lampstand and set up its lamps, and you shall put the golden altar for the incense before the altar ark of the testimony, and set up the screen for the door of the tabernacle. You shall set the altar burnt offering before the door of the tabernacle of the tent of meeting, and place the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar, and put water in it. And you shall set up the court all around, and hang up the screen for the gate of the court. So basically what we see here is the Lord is starting from the very center of all of their worship, where his presence will reside on the mercy seat of the Ark of the Testimony. From there, they will continue to add pieces and continue to go out to the outer courts of the tabernacle. So starting from where the holiest place is, the Holy of Holies, they will put the Ark of the Testimony there. Then they will expand to the altar of incense and the table for showbread and the candle lampstand, and then they will put the tent of meeting around that. And then on the outside in the courtyard, there will be the altar of burnt offering alongside the basin for water, and then the courtyard's fence, the curtains around there. So again, now starting up with verse 9. Then you shall take the anointing oil and anoint the tabernacle and all that is in it, and consecrate it and all its furniture, so that it may become holy. You shall also anoint the altar of burnt offering and all its utensils, and consecrate the altar, so that the altar may become most holy. You shall also anoint the basin and its stands, and consecrate it. Then you shall bring Aaron and his sons to the entrance of the tent of meeting, and you shall wash them with water. And put on Aaron the holy garments, and you shall anoint him and consecrate him, that he may serve me as priest. You shall bring his sons also, and put coats on them, and anoint them, as you anointed their fathers, that they may serve me as priests. And their anointing shall admit them to a perpetual priesthood throughout their generations. So we'll pause there. The idea of consecrating or blessing something means that we're setting it aside to be used for the Lord, to treat it as holy as God has made it holy. It is not a work of our hands, but of the Lord, and it's to be in our mind that that place is set aside for those works, not to be used for something else. Think, for example, in our church, we have set aside the altar, consecrated it to be a place by which we worship and hold the elements of communion and serve people from. We don't use it as a desk. We don't use it as a writing place. We don't use it as a computer desk. It is set aside to be used solely for the Lord. And that's what that means, to make it holy in our eyes and before the Lord, and consecrate it and bless it. And so also, not only the elements, but also the priests are being washed with water, clothed, and anointed to become the priesthood of the nation. You might also think about your own baptism, where you're washed with water, and in a lot of cases, tradition to wear white. You are a holy priesthood before the Lord, a person who is part of the continuous proclamation of what God has done to the entire world and amongst each other. So you kind of see this reflected here in the Old Testament with the consecrating of the priests. We'll continue with verse 16. This Moses did according to all that the Lord had commanded him. So he did. In the first month, in the second year, on the first day of the month, the tabernacle was erected. Moses erected the tabernacle. He laid its bases and set up its frames and put in its poles and raised up its pillars. And he spread the tent over the tabernacle and put the covering of the tent over it, as the Lord had commanded Moses. He took the testimony and put it into the ark, and put the poles on the ark, and set the mercy seat above the ark. And he brought the ark into the tabernacle, and set up the veil of the screen, and screened the ark of the testimony as the Lord had commanded Moses. And he put in the table in the tent of meeting, on the north side of the tabernacle, outside the veil, and arranged the bread on it before the Lord as the Lord had commanded Moses. And he put the lampstand in the tent of meeting, opposite the table on the south side of the tabernacle, and set up lamps before the Lord, as the Lord had commanded Moses. He put the golden altar in the tent of meeting before the veil, and burned fragrant incense on it, as the Lord had commanded Moses. He put in place a screen for the door of the tabernacle, and he set the altar burnt offering at the entrance of the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, and offered on it the burnt offering and the grain offering, as the Lord had commanded Moses. He set the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar, and put water in it for washing, with which Moses and Aaron and his sons washed their hands and their feet. When they went into the tent of meeting, and when they approached the altar, they washed, as the Lord commanded Moses. And he erected the court around the tabernacle and altar, and set up the screen of the gate of the court. So Moses finished the work. So Moses has done all the things needful to create the tabernacle as the Lord had commanded them. So now we read the final few verses of Exodus to see what the Lord does himself. Then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And Moses was not able to enter the tent of meeting because a cloud settled on it. And the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Throughout all their journeys, whenever the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle, the people of Israel would set out. But if the cloud was not taken up, they did not set out till the day that it was taken up. For the cloud of the Lord was on the tabernacle by day, and fire was in it by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel throughout all their journeys. So what gives this place its actual glory or holiness is the Lord. Moses had been going around consecrating and blessing all of these elements. And when the glory of the Lord settled on the tent of meeting, Moses was no longer able to enter into the tent of meeting because of the glory of the Lord. It is because of God that this place is holy. It is because of God that this place is used for the offerings. It is because of God. And this is a reflection of the sacrifice of Jesus. We have all of the blessings that we have because of Jesus. We have forgiveness because of Jesus. Entrance into the presence of God in heaven because of Jesus. It's all because of God. We have finished up here with Exodus. The Bible continues on with Leviticus, which is a wonderful text about how to use the tabernacle to grant forgiveness and blessing to the people of Israel. But we're going to pause here with the first 5 books of the Bible and pick a narrative. Esther is what we'll read next, and I hope you join us next time there for Esther and Reading the Bible with Pastor.